Welcome to another exciting episode of the Real Deal Podcast. Let's go. All right, welcome to another great episode of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harden. Glad to be back. It is September 14th, live here in Philadelphia. Thank you for everyone that's tuning in. Thank you for everyone that's tuning in on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Spreaker. Also, we're on the Roku channel, BS3 Network Roku channel. Thank you for everyone that tunes in, that supports and all that. And before I get started, I want to give a big thank you to all my listeners and supporters for voting the podcast, the Real Deal Podcast, for the best sports podcast on the BS3 Network Awards and the best podcast of the year as well. I can't thank you guys enough. I'm so appreciative. And again, thank you for all the votes. And there was against a lot of great shows on the network. And I was named, like I said, Podcast of the Year and Best Sports Podcast of the Year as well. So again, thank you to all my listeners that follow, that share it and everything. I thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. Without you guys, this is not possible. So again, thank you. So yeah, you can follow the show on all podcasts and social media platforms. I Get the Real Deal on Twitter, X, and Courtney Harden on Facebook, Instagram, again, Twitter as well. And the BS3 Network, BS3TVLive.com is the website. So really thank you again for the support. But I'm not going to keep my guests waiting too much longer. I'm very excited to have him on the show. I was just telling him, I emailed him this past week and I got his book. So here it is right here. You can see it. You probably can't really. There it is. Yep. The 2024-2025 NBA Preview Almanac. If you're an NBA fan, please get this here. He's an NBA author, former basketball analytics consultant for Phoenix and Chicago. He's done so many of these almanacs. I've got the last three, and I really, if you're an NBA fan, you dive into this. If you're into scouting reports and breakdowns and in-depth projection of every player in all 30 teams. I have on the show Richard Liu. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm gonna plug your book. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at all the everywhere. So yeah, just to see if you can see it there. I know it's a little, but yeah, the 2024-25 NBA previews, a 500-page in-depth. It said projections, scouting reports. So I wanted to get you on, talk about that. So again, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So let's, before we get into the book and how you get, how you present it, how you write it and everything, talk a little bit about the intro into your background, how you got into writing, becoming an author, and also you was a basketball analytics too. So I'll talk about your backstory.
Yeah, so I guess it starts kind of. I was in college, and I'd picked up a copy of Michael Lewis's Moneyball, and so it kind of was the first thing that kind of put the idea in my head that maybe this was a pathway into sports that I could explore, because analytics at that time was kind of in its kind of very earliest stage of being adopted. So it was like, okay, can you do this for basketball? And so I had in college worked on and had developed a system to project college players into the NBA. And so I've been since that time been tweaking, refining that. And so when I was done with grad school, I was kind of looking to latch on to teams. And so I had gone to things like the Sloan Conference to try to build up contacts and things like that. And so sent out like a large letter blast to like as many teams that didn't have analytics people.
Hmm.
And, a lot of it, it's, if you do, like cold letters, a lot of that stuff, people just throw out. But then just out of the blue, I had to like double check to like make sure it was like I was like, I wasn't getting like spammed or anything. Or like,
Yeah, right.
or Steve Kerr, first guy on the horn, just, sends me an email, just, kind of just trading ideas back and forth. And so in that process, just kind of building that relationship allowed me to kind of do some stuff with Phoenix while, kind of in the last year or so of his GM tenure. And so it was, it was analyzing lineups and things that might help out, in future matchups. So then, when the playoffs roll on, that's really all a lot of what ends up happening is where you're trying to, an opponent has a lineup that's kind of working and you have to try to find some counter to that. And so having sort of that experience kind of happening in real time where you're sort of just analyzing information and just going to go, oh yeah, you might want to, suggest this defensive switch over here instead of, what you're doing now. And then it's the first time you get actual live feedback of a suggestion that happens like on the court. And so that was kind of my early start where it was just, kind of doing things for, kind of doing little lineup analyses and things for Steve Kerr, just kind of on a part-time basis. And it was going to be a full-time analytics gig, but then, just kind of some of the inner workings of ownership and management kind of got in the way. And so that kind of fell through, but then, through just establishing that relationship, I got sort of passed on to Chicago just because Steve Kerr and John Paxson used to be teammates. And so that's where, there was a logical connection. And so then I had gotten in contact with, the then director of college scouting, Matt Lloyd, who's with the Timberwolves now. So it was with the Timberwolves now. And so he was working on draft prep and I had a draft analytics system that, I would have been working on. So he just kind of asked me for stuff on wing players and so I kind of just shared my information with him and I just said kind of in looking at their situation and where they were picking, it just kind of said, the only guy that really makes sense with these with where they're picking late in the first round, and, kind of the defensive culture they established in those really early Thibodeau years was Jimmy Butler. And that's where, again, probably some information lined up and, they had and so anytime you suggest something that they already are kind of like, okay, we might follow through on, it ends up happening and
they use it. Yeah.
And they use it. So that's where, I just say, hey, this probably makes sense. And then they pick him and he exceeds all expectations with the career he's had. So.
Wow. I love that. I love that background story because it's for me and read, and it is hard to find these days. It's easy to find in the internet, numbers, analytics, and because all teams are now using them, it's more of a numbers base. But I love the old school scouting, just the eyeball test too, using analytics and it all combining together. And I used to buy magazines that used to have the scouting reports of players and things like that, and it is harder to find, maybe because they're trying to keep it more. I mean, you can find it on the internet, of course, but that real in-depth analysis, which I really love. I mean, I guess it's just more of numbers and things like that. But I love to hear like scout reports of how to play. Why does this player, love this spot on the court? Why does this, why are they such a good rebounder, or they're better in offensive rebounding than they are defensive rebound? And then when I came up on your preview guide, in Almanac, and I saw it, I was like, okay, this is what I've been looking for. I want to dive deeper into that. And that's just me, when I have the time, I love reading this stuff. And like you said, you built relationships throughout, and now the GMs and things that probably I'm sure they come to you, scouts come to you, and now you've built that relationship. Talk about that again, like a little bit about like the relationship that you have with like the scouting departments and the research that goes into when you're building the almanac for the year.
Yeah, a lot of it was just if you're starting out kind of as an analytics person, it's just kind of making sense of what you're. It's just you kind of need to you need to develop that basketball knowledge so you can explain what your findings are to somebody who doesn't have the same sort of analytic mathematical who comes from, who doesn't have the same mathematical background but has more of a traditional scouting background. So able to, understanding how to communicate those ideas to someone like that. So then you're taking data and you're just kind of saying, okay, yeah, this is, this guy's a good 3-point shooter. Okay, why is he a good 3-point shooter?
Right.
Okay, he's coming, is he spotting up? Is he just open spot ups? Is this running off screens? And so a lot of this kind of came just through experience and just, talking with people and going to different events and sort of getting a sense of the questions they would ask, and, then finding those answers. So a lot. And then it also helped on my end where a lot of my earliest kind of interactions with analytics was based in the draft, and the draft is not a linear thing where guys at very young parts of their development are very unpolished, where, there's no guarantee that, say, like, a good shooter in college is still a good shooter in the NBA, or somebody who is, you take someone like, like Kawhi Leonard is kind of the easiest kind of example, where coming out of college, his jump shot was a big question mark. But then, you put him in San Antonio with Chip Engelland, arguably, the best shooting coach in the league. And you give him, and then it also happens to coincide with a lockout where you get a few extra months of off season to sort of develop that, to get reps, to improve your game. And so then he comes into the NBA as a much better shooter than he was coming out of college. And so, and you have other examples of, where a guy similar profile goes into a poor developmental environment and then their career doesn't turn out as well. And so trying to at least watch these things and understand, okay, how to, how do you project things based on, a small sample of data, is just something, you sort of learn over time. And so that's where in just constantly kind of engaging with the game and engaging with, people who are more experienced than I am at this, you start to develop a deeper knowledge, just because, you pick their brains for the best insights and sort of apply it to whatever it is you're doing. And that's what I try to do with it's what I try to do every time I write these books. So that's,
I enjoy it. I really do. And I've been, like I said, I was looking for, because, they don't, you get the magazines and they give you the basics, and which I enjoy that too, just reading just about the team previews and things like that, but not so much more in depth. Or I love to just dive into those things. It could be basketball, it could be football. Like, I literally like to dive into that. And so we'll get into the almanac, because as you said, you also do an NBA draft one too before, and I'm sure that takes on a whole nother level of scouting. And because, like you said, you're trying to the players coming from college to the pros are developing, and they're working on certain things. To said, if you might have been a good shooter in college, but it doesn't translate to the pros, or it takes a little bit more work, or you have to work on your jump shot. Just for an example like that, you said, like Kawhi Leonard, who had to work on, his jump shot just with, reps, practice time and things like that. But it's just that in-depth analysis of it. What do you say what has changed over the years of how players are analyzed?
A lot of it, I think, well, we have just so much more data in terms of just, we have all the, the synergy stuff where you can parse out, the different situations. So there's a lot more there. You can go into finer detail. Whereas, you looked at, maybe 20 years ago, you didn't have much other than maybe the box score. And the box score is flawed just because there's just not, it's flawed, especially if when you consider that, there are only like two or three stats that tell you something about defense, but it doesn't really tell you, if someone actually forces someone to, miss a shot or anything like that. So you don't have, the box score doesn't give you as much. It gives you something, but it doesn't give you everything. And so
like
now
surface level.
surface level. And now we have, everything that you can get on Basketball Reference and, and all the different stat package that you can, if you are willing to go out and seek out that data, you can find it. And so in doing so, you get a better sense of players' roles. Just players' roles, how they're being used, where their strengths and weaknesses really lie. So then you can you have a better idea of how different players fit together. And so that, so that's, it helps in analyzing them as individuals and then, you can go deeper into how they impact a team and impact a team. And so when, impact a team. So that's kind of the bigger one. There's just more information in the game. And so because of that, you can just get better insights into what is actually going on. And so that's a lot of it is just, and then from there, it's just translating that huge volume of data into just something that, people can understand. And so that's what, again, it's something I just try to do. And just in breaking down kind of these, breaking down players and kind of coming up with these scouting reports is just, giving you just the most understandable picture of who any given player is at this kind of point in time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it goes, that's what you said. There's so much data, there's so much analytics, so many numbers. Like there's so many statistics now that it's more advanced, and there's so much. And even so, like my wife will say something like, there's so much now. There's not just points per game. It's not just rebounds and assists. And as you said, that's the surface level of stats that you can get. Now there's, the PER, and then there's the, rebounds per 48 minutes or points per 48 minutes. If they, there's all these different statistics. You might say there's too many, but I like what you said. I like what your Almanac does. It does kind of still is comprehensive, but it still breaks it down in a more understandable way. And I think that's a good way for people to think, oh, I never thought of that player if they had a weakness like that, and break it down, like why is that their weakness, or maybe something they're working on, to say. Speaking of the Almanac, when do you usually start to, after the season's over, or does it not turn off? Does it just, you think, okay, the season is over, I know you get into the draft, but when you get into the previews, when do you start to really put it all together?
Yeah, I mean, writing, it's essentially, it's a process that takes, several months where,
right.
where both books kind of overlap with each other. So like a lot of, with my draft book, there's a little bit of like a season review, just because you're trying to understand where teams are at, heading into the draft. And so then you're kind of getting a sense of like what they might be looking for. And in terms of just, where, again, like, are they rebuilding? Are they contending? Do they have a positional hole or whatnot? And so, and, then salary cap issues and things of that nature. So kind of, around trade deadline is where I sort of start analyzing teams, because rosters are set, because, the deadline's over. You can't really make a trade. So you kind of have a good sense of where a team is at that point. So I start kind of analyzing things for that part towards, around trade deadline. And then like about a month later, you get the NCAA tournaments happening. So so that's about when the draft prospect seasons are ending. So then it's like, okay, as players' seasons are ending, that's when I can sort of lock in analysis of those prospects. And so then that all feeds into getting the draft book done sometime by early June. And then in that little window I have when the draft book comes out to, like, say, the draft and kind of summer league off season, I have to actually, run the players in the league through my projection system. And so that just kind of comparing, just building a system that compares just any, whatever the, season they had against the entire, the history of the NBA in the modern era. It's a volume of data that kind of has to go through. So that takes time, especially if you consider there are, 15 active players on every roster, two-way spots. And then on top of this, when July rolls around, you just don't know who's on what team, because there are trades and free agents going around at the speed that the NBA moves. So there's a lot, so early on, it's prep work just to make sure I have just the data in place in a way that I can sort of rearrange it when it's time, when my ballpark, like when the book starts to really come together is about second week of summer league, where every team has mostly done what they needed to do in free agency. And so you start to get a sense of what rosters are.
Yeah.
And so then that's okay, put these things together, then take all my notes and that's why a lot of this is in bullet point form, just because going from like mid-July to the end of August is just a very quick turnaround. And it's so you gotta, it's gotta be quick. And so it's just, it's a high volume data in a very short amount of time.
Right.
And then you're still responding to anything that happens in this league, which happens all the time, where I've been in the middle of locking in like a page count. So I'm, manually doing, table of contents and indexes. And then, 1 year I was doing this, and then Russell Westbrook and John Wall get traded for each other.
Yeah.
And so then, it's like, oh, now, it's like, I have to then either choose, okay, I got to rearrange everything, or I just got to like find some way to just account for it on the fly. And then even after I publish these things, big trades will go down, and it's just like, okay, at some point, the target is moving so much and so unpredictably that you have to try to prepare for it as much as possible. And so that's a lot of what ends up happening. It's, kind of the kind of crunch that happens sort of, kind of that in that little late July to August period is pretty hectic. And so just kind of doing as much prep work sort of before the, kind of while draft, like as much prep work as I can, kind of in that little, before the draft window is kind of where a lot of this stuff happens. So it's usually I'm probably in about a 5 to 6 month period where I'm putting two books together basically at once.
Yeah, and that's like you're talking thousands of pages, as you
Yeah.
said, because of 30 teams, and you're right. Like there's so much moving parts, especially in the NBA. There's really no downtime, and you got to really, like you said, was as an author, you are really locked in. You have to really pay attention because there's times like when there, especially when it's the free agency
Yeah.
over the summer, right after right after the draft, right after finals draft, summer league, or yeah, finals draft, and then you have the free agency summer league. There's so many moving parts, and then there's times I'm thinking, okay, I see some of a lot of the moves, but I didn't even know this player even went here, like as a free agent. Like, where did they go? Oh, they're
Yeah.
still on this team. So you really have to really pay attention. And it's a lot of times when I even like say when I start to, I'm like I said, big fans of NBA of basketball. So I'll pay attention. Then then I'll take that little break because NFL comes in. I'm a big fan of NFL, so I'm locked in. I'm like, oh my goodness, such and such. They did go back to their team, to their respective team. Totally forgot. Then you got to, like you said, as a writer, you have to really like just there's so many moves. There's you have to either reformat everything you've already said, your table of contents and your bullet points, or or just okay, let me just rearrange this. And well, how did this player translates on this team, and how does this help them move the needle, make them better, or does it make them worse? And so you have to put that all in perspective, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, an example of this, just of how this kind of moved, where the Olympics Olympics
Yeah.
are going on,
Yes.
and France goes on a run, and then for the in the medal round and all that, Gershon Yabusele starts playing well, and and then he has it, he performs well against the
Mm-hmm.
U.S. in the gold medal game, and this was a player who was like, yeah, he's been very productive in Europe, and
Yeah.
but but when it was come to like free agent, NBA free agency, he hadn't been mentioned for
At all,
for
right.
years,
Yeah.
and so then you see this in real time, and you're just like, oh, I might have to prepare something because there are open roster spots around the league,
Yeah.
and then a couple weeks later, and then like within like a week, he signs with the Sixers, and so that's where you kind of have to pay attention. You have to kind of be on alert at times where it's like, okay, this is a move might happen, so I gotta move. I might have to move quick to sort of adjust, insert something, and so.
Yeah.
And so while, especially if it happens within the window of writing, it's something I can adjust. If it's like, okay, I'm getting close to finalizing this thing, I really hope nothing happens where, it's like, I really hope nothing happens
Before it's published, right?
and then it's like, okay, if it's afterwards, then I can just throw my hands up and go, okay, that, I had a date I was aiming for, and I put it out. But if it happens like right during the window, it's kind of like, okay, now I have to do. And yeah, there was a stretch, like maybe 2 or 3 of these in a row, where a trade was made like right on a finalization date or something. And so it's always tough to kind of adjust for these things, but you try to do what you can.
Yep. Exactly. I love it. Now, I mean, that'd be for you. I'm going to say this is it's more work, but you enjoy it because, but it's that rush. Now, do you go and you said, I know you go to conferences. Do you travel a lot? Like, do you go to summer league? Maybe talk to scouts, and I know that's a big place to where the GMs and coaches and owners are talking. Now, do you go to play like those type of things?
Yeah, I mean, every year for the most part. I mean,
okay,
depending on my schedule, I have been going to summer league just because that's also just again, if you're just an NBA fan, just that first week of summer league is probably one of the best experiences, because you can you get to see you get to see, young players before they, really kind of, really, mature and things like that. And then you're kind of, you have the whole league there. And so you're just kind of in the middle of, it's like you're looking like in real time. There's, you see executives talking, and then you have free agent moves being made basically around you. So
around that day,
yeah. And so like it does, and especially, and then, so even as a fan, it's just like, it's a good experience. And then as someone who does just have contacts, it's just, that is the most convenient place to just to maintain everything, because everyone's there. So then so that's probably the one place I probably, do go ports, do the Vegas Summer League. And then, if I can fit it in, I do like the Portsmouth Invitational, just because it's a smaller kind of setting, but you get teams are there, and then you get a tournament of sort of the lesser kind of heralded prospects, but you can still get, but guys, really good players still come out of there, where, it is where, again, Jimmy Butler was MVP of one of these things. And, you can, and there are countless other examples of guys who have gotten two-way contracts now who make their way into the league. And that's a good place that if you maybe want to go away from the huge crowds of Summer League, Portsmouth is a place if people out there are looking to, kind of find, meet people who work in the league, that's a place. So those are probably the two events that I would probably say are, that kind of I try to hit as much as I can.
Yeah, because you say with travel and things like that, it's I'm sure it's I have to make it to Summer League. I've been wanting to, and every time there's always something else comes up, or I have to plan it like this is gonna okay. Me and wife say, hey, we're going to Vegas around. I know it's hot, but we're going to Vegas around this time, and we're gonna take that first week of Summer League, couple days, and this will be one time we'll do it, and not even just for. I can do it for the podcast, but I just as a fan, just to go and watch Summer League, and you see, like say, see all the young prospects, and because they might not get a lot of time during the regular season, this is their time to shine and really continue to develop. You get to see them firsthand before the NBA regular season comes up. But with the NBA regular season almost here, like I said, everyone. Yeah, I mean, if you can, buy the book and get prepared for it. It's coming very soon. Training camps will start in probably about 2-3 weeks. What's some of the biggest storylines you're looking forward to heading into the new season?
Yeah, just one of the big kind of storylines that I'm just kind of interested in is what's going to happen out west. Kind of the rise of Oak City and sort of where they're at sort of at this stage. I mean, they made some really good moves by trading for Caruso, signing Isaiah Hartenstein. So they're starting to kind of make sort of pushes to contend, to really strengthen their roster. And so, but then strengthen their roster, but they're still really young too, where it's kind of where are they at? Are they, are they ready to win a title? Are they kind of in that early stage where, they're a great team, but they're not battle tested enough. So they might, they might need to go through some, a year or two of some disappointments to kind of harden them a little bit, and just kind of help them kind of understand, kind of the stakes of the playoffs. And then they're also doing this in the backdrop of kind of some contractual second apron kind of things, where after this season, Caruso's a free agent. They have to extend Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. So then, on top of just, basketball stuff, is just trying to see whether or not they choose to just, commit to this all out and spend what it takes to kind of keep everyone together and kind of continue with their progress, or is something going to kind of is something going to kind of get in the way, which kind of might kind of halt some progress in the next year or two. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see where they are, because if they're a legitimate contender, then you kind of start to get a little bit more of a pecking order in the West. But then, like, if they're not quite ready, that kind of keeps the door open for a lot of these other teams, where the West is also just, if you're just looking at everybody else, they're grouped really close together, where you could have, the way I kind of looked at it, and I touch on it in the book, is there are probably 12 teams going for 10 slots. So there's going to be a pretty solid team that just gets, that does, there are going to be one or two solid teams that don't make the playoffs, and then you're going to get, a couple of them that just, that sneak into sort of those back end seeds that could cause that could make things really interesting in the early rounds. And so the regular season in the West, seeding is going to be pretty important just to figure out matchups, and if someone gets a favorable draw, they might go further than you might think, or if someone, if one side of the bracket is, kind of a little more stacked, you could see somebody get knocked out early. So that's going to be interesting just to see how that all shakes out. And then the other thing kind of I'm looking at is just, seeing kind of what team emerges as kind of the main challenger to Boston, where they are essentially running everything back. So, they were, 60 plus wins last year, and then they have, they're coming off a title and they have all their continuity together. So they're a notch kind of ahead of everybody. But then you have the Knicks making their move with Mikal Bridges, and
it's gonna be interesting.
And and then with Mikal Bridges, and then Philly got Paul George. So you have some teams that kind of on paper look like they can give them an interesting push. There's still maybe, with the Knicks, they have to figure out who's playing center. So then, to really, to really solidify their just their chances. Cause there's a little bit of kind of doubt in there as to, if you're looking at it from a matchups perspective as to like, okay, how are they, if they go up against someone that plays big, okay, so who's in that slot, or how are they going to distribute minutes with Josh Hart and OG and
all those wing players. They got a lot
at the same time. So it's, it'll be interesting to see how they sort of sort out their new, this good problem that they have. They have like almost, too many, they have a lot of good perimeter players, and then, not quite, they're not quite balanced enough interior, but talent wise, they have a good situation. And so that's where the East could, the East could be interesting in that sense. And then there's the third layer, which is the whole Cooper Flag sort of tanking, like how far is this going to go? And then how does that affect sort of in-season movement, where there could, like what veterans come into play that way that might be able to maybe swing something, in terms of just, a little, like a team making small upgrades or something like that.
Yeah, I like all of that too. You're right. I think especially the West, as you said, how does that shape up that top half? Because you said you broke OKC, and you still have Denver. Like, how are they going to look? And Minnesota, can they take that next step and make the finals? They were so close, of making the finals? Does Dallas, do they run it back and make the finals? Getting Klay Thompson now to add to their mix. How does that work with Luka and Kyrie? So I mean, that's just some of the top teams in the West that the top four that can actually make some noise. When you got Phoenix, what does that look like in their situation? Is this Durant's last season there, or does he get traded midseason? I mean, there's so many questions with the West, but you're right. There is a pecking order, but we just don't know what that pecking order is. Is OKC the best team? Is Minnesota the best team? We don't really know. And you broke down the East, especially the top half, and not even mention the Bucks. Like, where do they go from there? Have they hit the walls? Was that their best when they won the championship a couple seasons ago? Was that it? Or can they really contend with Boston, or what team can really contend with Boston? Because it's hard for me at least, it's hard for me to see any teams in the East. There's been movements, as you said. The Knicks made moves, Philly made moves. So can any of those teams really beat a Celtics team that is running it back with everybody? And I see them as the best team still on both conferences. I still see the Celtics probably back to back.
Yeah, I mean they're very heavy favorite. I mean, it's just I mean, the only real question mark I'd probably say is that, a little bit, they have a little bit of a center issue just because
yes,
Porzingis and health, and then you have Al Horford who's pushing almost 40, so you worry that again over a long season how those guys hold up, but they've played but last year they played Porzingis was kind of in and out of the lineup, so they kind of have been using Luke Cornett to sort of help manage kind of some minutes and kind of push them at least through the regular season where they, and use, some of their back end guys a little more, against in matchups where, you don't really, where the stress level isn't super, super high. So, but other than that, they look like a pretty heavy favorite just to at least come out of the East. And then, depending on what team kind of emerges out of the West is, it could be, matchups could come into play, but, it's hard to kind of see a definitive, like, okay, this is the team that they're going to go up against. So then from there, it's kind of seeing who makes moves or something to try to close the gap a little bit. And so this is where you do have a team like, Oak City could always, because they have, they still have all those draft picks, left to trade. So they could flip somebody to add another piece. And then, then there are some issues, there are some veterans that could come into play if things go south, where, Miami kind of gets off to a slow start. There's some small talk that Jimmy Butler might be on the, they're willing to, they might be willing to shop him or whatnot.
They're taking phone calls or maybe.
Then, you look at, Brent, or, even guys that have kind of been tossed around where Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine, and so and then just anybody, any of these kind of kind of role guys on teams like Utah, Portland, Detroit, all these kind of bottom feeders that might look to kind of pair down for draft position. So so that's always something to kind of look out for, where we have the rosters are mostly set now, but then who's if someone gets off to a slow start, then some names get put in play that could kind of change the outcome of the season.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. All right, last one. I guess I was trying to keep you less than an hour. We could talk this NBA for hours on hours just to, with the season upcoming. But the last one, the big TV deal or the NBA and the deals that they've made with NBC and Amazon and now with TNT, that all the whole media, I should say media deal, but it's transpired, and now TNT is suing, and or I should say Warner Brothers. TNT, I should say that Warner Brothers, is suing the NBA, because they want to keep the NBA there. But if this is it for Inside NBA with Ernie, Kenny, Charles, and Shaq, if this is the last season of that, what do you think of that, and how you think it's going to end? And if this is the last season for them, how they think they will go out and with one of the best studio shows we've ever seen?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think with the last season, I mean, you could, in terms of just how the tenor of the show could end up, where you could get, a little bit more. There might be a little more freedom in terms of like how, like the tone of which that, because now, where they go to, because it could be ending. And it could be the end of like that stuff, where, because now we're going into this, streaming media deal where now you have networks and things that are in play that haven't been there before. So you might have different, there might be some, like the sort of post show format might be, it might end up being different where like, even if you look at like, say, Amazon, where you could get, because it's streaming and you have different, different options could come into play, where it's like if you had someone who was looking for something more like what we have with Inside the NBA, that could be one option. If you have people who are looking more, X's and O's breakdown sort of things, where you might have one post show that's, just, a series of like, it's X players, coaches. It might be, your showcases for the future sort of JJ Redicks of the world, where they can, they break down the game at a more intellectual level, or which, so I feel like it's kind of the end of the end of one, and it's the end of one where I'm not sure what to expect, where, we could, with Charles, we could see sort of fully sort of unleashed Charles, but at the same time, like, they still I guess in reading the reports, they are kind of keeping Charles on the network, and then he's going to be doing other sports and things of that.
Yeah.
Like a talking head. So you might, it's like you might get it might be a little looser than I would probably say, like probably just, again, with the finality of it, it just could be like a little bit more of like a bittersweet kind of fun kind of vibe kind of to that. And then that'll probably transition to kind of something different with these shows where because you have so many different media interests involved. And so that's that. And then this media rights deal just kind of points to kind of a different era in terms of just how teams are built, just because because now there's just going to be more money involved in the game. And so now you look at like how that affects teams, where it's like, the caps are going to go up, and, that's where, all these payroll questions are going to come in, where, the numbers are they're just going to keep going higher and higher. And so then that puts into kind of question as to like, how these teams are how there's teams have to afford all this stuff. And so you might get, again, bigger money kind of involved with ownership. And so it's going to be, it's hard to kind of predict what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting to see how kind of how these new sort of media deals kind of impact the league, and then just if it is even if it's an opportunity to kind of explore kind of new ground and how the game is presented and communicated to fans, and along those lines, that could be interesting because we're also seeing with the Amazon part of it that it's kind of reducing kind of the value of kind of the regional sports networks. So because now you do have kind of two kind of distribution kind of arms with the ESPN aspect of it, and then Amazon as basically replacing kind of the local cable network basically. And so how this it'll be interesting to see how this kind of impacts League Pass and sort of blackout kind of issues and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I think, as you said, with the Warner Brother Discovery aspect of it, and I wonder, did they? I mean, they're in this, they're suing the NBA, but it makes you wonder heading into the season. Still about a month or so left. Will they peel back on it? They don't want that. I know they're going to fight, but do they want that heading into the season where that'll be the talk of it? And I don't know if they really want to go there. I mean, they could go there for the long haul. I know they want to keep the NBA, but it seems like they said the NBA and the media rights deal, like they're dug into, this is the deal we have with the other networks, the ESPN, ABC, the Disney, ESPN, ABC, NBC, Amazon. This is where we want to go. And, unfortunately, it's at the expense of, TNT. But the NBA said with so much money streaming, the NBA can't, I guess they don't want to miss out. They see the Amazon, they see the NFL on Amazon. They see they see that, and it's doing well, and it's a lot of money. So they want to get into, they want to dip their toes in that, which makes sense, and it makes a lot of sense, and it would be an adjustment period for people, but yes, it'll be, all good things come to an end. Unfortunately, TNT, we've been spoiled with Barkley and Ernie and Kenny and Shaq for so many years, and doesn't mean like it's gonna. I mean, maybe it'll just be I don't know if it's gonna be on a different network if they move. I know they said Ernie said he doesn't want to go. As Barkley, they want to keep Barkley, and Kenny and Shaq will probably stay too, and they probably do it as maybe a podcast format, possibly something on that line. They'll do that, but as of now, I'm looking forward to see. As you said, it might be even more looser than it is already loose, but there might be a no holds barred type of show where, because they're going to take shots at the NBA, they're going to take shots at the media rights and all these things. So I can see it just spinning out of control a little bit, especially with the way Barkley likes to talk. So I'm looking forward to it to see how this potentially last season of Inside the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of like like they're it's like a high school kid going into their senior year, where it's where it's just you're graduating and you're on your way out, so you just kind of let loose and kind of just and then you just move, and then whatever happens into the future, you just kind of figure it out after that. So I think that's kind of the approach. I just kind of whatever, just kind of enjoy this last year while it's there, and then then whatever the future holds, we sort of it'll be that.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Totally agree. All right, Richard. Well, thank you again. This was an honor. It was I really enjoyed this conversation, and just an in-depth look at how you write the almanac and how you get into it and the analytics. And again, the 2024-2025 NBA preview almanac, get a copy of that. there. It's a big, thick, it's an almanac. So it's a big, thick book here, and I love it. And if you're an NBA fan, definitely dive into it. Let everyone know where they can follow you. I know you have the Substack, you have the website. Just present your socials and where they can get the book and all those good things.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm my username at RVLHoops. So I'm on. I that's where I usually update people with content releases, and I have you can find me on Amazon. I have an author. Yeah, if you kind of type in my name and an author page shows up, and I'll give you a link to all the different books and all the different books that I've done over the years, and then I also I'm also on Substack, and so that's where every once in a while I'll if there's kind of something I want to write that that kind of piques my interest sort of in the kind of the downtime between when I've released the book to like when I'm about to kind of start kind of the process of writing those again. That's where I have some kind of timely articles. So So you can find the links to the Substack and the link and the links to the author page on my Twitter bio. So that's and once again that was at RVLHoops, and that's the main place where you can find me. And for any information on just when books release and things of that sort.
Oh yes, like I said, follow Richard on Twitter, and you said on Amazon. Get some information there. And you said the author bio is on Amazon as well. Thanks again, Richard, for your time. I really enjoyed this, and as I said, it's uploading on Twitter right now, the video. So everyone, check out this. If you're an NBA fan, you would definitely follow Richard and his the book and everything else. So again, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Have a good one.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Bye. All right. That was Richard Liu. Check out the book again, the 2024-2025 NBA Preview Almanac. Again, thank you everyone that tuned in to the show. Really appreciate it. And until next time, thank you. Follow the show. Follow all the content. BS3 at Get the Real Deal on Twitter and on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and all those podcast platforms. Again, until next time, thank you again and really appreciate it. Have a great weekend and God bless.